non-precision approaches. In our last video, we took a look at how you can determine the performance, the two critical numbers we need to know. Now, for our lovely little Mooney here, the first number that we figured out was 11 inches of mercury in full RPM. That was the magical combination that we needed in order to get us to a good speed where we could deploy our flaps and easily transition into an approach. The other speed we've discovered was 12 inches of mercury, which is going to be the power we require to maintain 90 knots throughout our non-precision approach. We also went over how to kind of manipulate power in order to make yourself have a nice, safe approach here. So what we're going to do today is we're actually going to fly the approach, and we're going to be doing it using a completely visual scenario so that you can kind of see everything going on. And then later on, we're actually going to fly the approach in a different sort of a way. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to go press the proc button real quick, select approach. We're going to be doing the VOR-A is what it's called. We're going to do it via Hartford, and we're going to press that one. I'm going to go ahead and activate that approach right away. It's going to say yes. I'm going to say yes. We're also going to confirm that our frequencies are correct, which they are not. So we're going to come in here. We're going to say 114.90. We're going to go do the swapperoo here because that's going to be the frequency that we need for the purposes of our approach here. So let's go ahead and close up my flight plan option. Now we got a little hold. There's my Zofox, by the way. And you can see if I actually flip my navigation hold mode on, our aircraft is going to go ahead and execute our little left turn here, and I'll kind of get us lined up with Hartford VOR. Now we're in a bit of a messy spot here because we have far more altitude than we're calling for. So that's going to be okay because the aircraft is going to throw itself into a hold as soon as we get a little bit closer anyway. So I'm not really too paranoid about that. There we go. Now it's behaving. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this approach and see if we can kind of translate what's going to be going on here. Boop, boop. All right, sweet. So we're down here, and what we're going to do is we're actually just crossing Hartford VOR now. It's going to be putting us into a holding pattern, which is what we want it to do, because obviously we have to work other things out right now. So we're going to be holding. We're going to be at an altitude of 2,500 feet or above. Check. And now we're going to go ahead and hit Hartford, which is going to be our final approach fix. So what's going to happen is as we fly out of this hold, we're going to activate our 11 inches of mercury right in here. So go ahead and slow our engine down and slow us down. Our objective is to be able to hit this VOR at as close to 90 knots as we possibly can. Once we cross this VOR, we're going to increase our power to 12 inches of mercury, and then we're going to go ahead and begin our descent. Now, our descent here is relatively steep, but fortunately, we know it's a 3-degree descent, more or less. That works great for us because that's going to tell us that we can go ahead and make this approach pretty easily. And it just means we just have to take half our speed. So it's going to be about a 500 feet per minute approach. Once we get to Zofox, which is 4.8 on the DME here, we're going to basically chill at 1,200 feet until we get to MAVD. Now, if we were going down to, we can actually get different pieces here. If we're doing a circling approach, our altitude is going to be limited to 1,200, 1.25. And of course, if we're doing Zovox with a DMA, which is going to be this guy right here, instead of hitting 1,200, we can go as low as 580 feet. Now, 580 feet is pretty darn low, and you'll see exactly what I mean when we actually start our approach here. All right, let's go flip over here. And like I said, we're just kind of going through the motions. All right, so first things first, we need to lose a lot of altitude here. We are far too high in order to be able to safely get this thing down. So I'm going to go ahead and order up 2,500 feet here. Fortunately, it's very easy to set this. I'm going to go ahead and do one of those. Going to activate the vertical speed mode here, and we'll get us going down pretty quick. One thing I love about the Mooney is we have speed brakes. So normally when you're approaching with this aircraft, of course, you have new problems to worry about. We have to make sure we don't shock cool the engine or anything silly like that. This is one of the later Moonies. We can be a little, not that we can be more brute force with it, but we have the ability to be a little bit more handsy with it because you don't even have the handle for the cow flaps on this one, which blows my mind, by the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to enjoy our nice relaxing hold pattern here. This is the great thing about speed brakes, and the great thing about autopilot is I can enjoy, lovely central Connecticut here as we're kind of swipping around without too much effort here. Now remember, our magic numbers that we're going to be interested in is going to be 11 for the crossing of the final approach fix, and it's going to be 12 once we dirty up the airplane. Dirty, dirty plane. Other things we're going to have to take into account, too, is this is still going to be a landing, so we're going to have to keep in mind that we want to make sure our flaps are in the right position, we're going to make sure our gear's in the right position, and everything's nice and stable for the approach. Let me go ahead and speed up time a little bit here, and just kind of enjoy my nice leisurely 1,000 feet per minute descent. One of the fun things is when I was getting my initial pilot's license here, when I was flying with the DPE, one of the things, he was like, okay, so the emergency we're going to do is simulate a baggage engine fire. So for those of you who know the Cessna 172, of course, the Cessna 172 has basically, you can go about 120, was that knots or miles an hour? I believe it was actually miles per hour is what it said. It was because it was an old 172. But what you do is you basically dive and do 120 miles an hour until the fire goes out. That was the procedure. And of course, the DP is like, all right, execute the appropriate procedure for the purposes of landing. By the way, anybody notice that my altitude did not catch? So we're actually several hundred feet below the altitude we're supposed to be at. So I'm going to go ahead and activate the altitude hold there. Good thing we're looking. Like I said, you always want to be paying attention, even when you're telling an old war story, kind of a thing like that. So this aircraft did not properly capture that at all. So let's see what we can do about that. All right, now altitude, vertical speed. That's always fun when that happens. Of course, usually when this happens in the real world, you're in all sorts of trouble here because of the fact that it's like we're supposed to be at 2,500 feet, but unfortunately we kind of drifted down a little bit there. All right, let's see if we can fix this up a little bit. There we go. We'll get a little bit of altitude. Good, because we needed the altitude anyway. All right, anyway, like I was saying, so of course the DPE is like, oh, yes, you've already demonstrated that you have more than capability to go fast. Because when this occurred, of course, he's like, don't go below this altitude and get us there as fast as I can. I said, okay. So the poor DPE received negative Gs as I basically got the aircraft into the world's fastest 119.9 mile an hour descent I could possibly get it into. And yeah, it was like 1,100 feet per minute or something like that. It was ridiculous. All right, let's see that this aircraft levels off properly. All right, now we have to actually work for this. So now it's time to go ahead and start taking advantage of all that knowledge that we gained from our previous video. We know, is that ice? What is this chunky stuff? Somebody's got to clean this. We know that because the 11 inches is our magic number here, as we're approaching that final approach fix, I'm immediately going to reduce down to my power. Now, there are a few people out there right now who are screaming at their screens going, you can't do that. That's less than 15 inches of power. That's going to get you in all sorts of trouble here. Correct. That could definitely be a major problem. But the concept of running these approaches at higher speed than the desired speed is also going to be its own piece. Now, there's nothing saying we couldn't approach at 120 knots, but that's going to be for another video. This is just for this basic, just kind of learning those initial approaches. All right, there's my 11 inches. I'm going to make sure my RPM's all set. My mixture is going to be all set. And the aircraft is going to immediately start slowing down to a speed where we can start getting ready for the approach itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pause this real quick. We're about to cross the final approach fix, and we got 10 seconds to go. The aircraft is slowing down quite nicely. Getting a little bit slow, right? Pause. Okay, so now we're on our final approach here. So because we know that our 11 inches is going to get us to the appropriate approach speed, it's just a matter of slowing down those last couple notches. One of the nice things is we're less than put down the gear speed, so I'm actually going to drop the gear. But before we do that, we actually want to kind of plan our next sort of course of a campaign here. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the VOR, and we're going to follow the 334 radial all the way down here until we get this at about 500 feet per minute. So I'm going to go ahead and get that all set up now. The first thing I do is I'm going to switch my CDI over to Hartford VOR, which is the one we should have had before. And now I'm going to go ahead and dial this in exactly as we need. So we needed a 334, I believe is what it said. 334. So you can actually see that we're slightly off to the left here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to dirty up the plane. We're going to get down to 500 feet per minute as our descent rate, and then we're basically going to fly it down continuously. The next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and get our stopwatch. Now, remember when I was talking about all these speeds in the bottom? This is where the magic happens. It's going to take me 4 minutes and 44 seconds to cross that particular point. Now, that point there, of course, is going to be the Zovox here. That's going to be different. Notice it's the missed approach point. So that's the important. I'm sorry, the missed approach point is going to be MAVD. So that's going to be from VOR all the way down to MAVD. So that's a total distance of 7.1 nautical miles from the point we actually cross this. Now, the interesting thing here is if you scroll down here, our DME says 0. That's actually mathematically not correct. They need to fix this. It would not be 0. The actual reality is there is some distance. There's the VOR station below us, by the way. There is some distance. You would actually have a slant distance here, so that's not accurate. Thank you, Flight Sim, for that. All right, let's do it. Let's put everything together and land this plane. So I'm going to go ahead and unpause. We're going to go ahead and push our 12 inches. We're going to dirty the plane up. And we're going to go ahead and hold that nose down real gently. And we're going to go ahead and start our 500 feet per minute descent. Now remember, because we got all that math done in advance, we can go ahead and just kind of dial the numbers in and just concentrate on holding our normal approaches here. All right, flaps are coming down next. Not even touching the throttle. Just holding the 500 feet per minute. Whoa! Felt that one. All right. I love the new turbulence model in Flight Sim. It makes me think in the real world that my real turbulence is actually better than this. Whoa! Oh, yeah, that's good stuff. I love it. Makes me feel so alive. All right, so we're going to just hold it now. Like I was mentioning before, notice how incredibly challenging this is to go ahead and hold all those numbers at the number that you needed to hold them. You can actually see that we're actually starting to drift a little off course here. There's my 500 feet per minute, and I'm going to hold it. Now just relax. Okay, look up on my left. You notice how we're doing about 90 knots? Also look up on my left. You see that I forgot to start my timer. That's okay though, because I got the one on my watch going. The other thing you'll notice is we're holding about 90. I'm making a minimal adjustments here. Our descent rate goes up just a little bit. I'm trying to avoid adjusting the throttle as much as I can here. We're getting a little bit closer to 13, but that's because I think we left it kind of drift a little bit. Also keep in mind the configuration of the plane is going to be a little different at this altitude than it was at the altitudes we tried it. So I noticed my speed starting to go down a little bit. So I'm just going to gently give us just a little bit of throttle here. And again, this is a kind of a consequence of when you calculated things, it could be different than when you actually execute them. All right, we need to come to my left a little bit more. Still holding about that 500 feet per minute, trying to get as close to 90 as we can possibly get. Again, minimize what we need to do here. The aircraft is already dirty. I made that comment already. And you can see everything's coming in pretty smooth. Actually, going to come to my right a little bit here. That looks good. And again, I'm just concentrating on my instruments right now. And I'm trying to do as little throttle changes as I possibly can. But the key thing is, because I had that starting point, I'm not sitting here stressing and trying to get all the powers set. I can just concentrate on flying the approach rather than trying to go to war with all the different settings here. That looks pretty good. We'll drift over to the right a little bit. Not the world's most stable non-precision approach here, but it does demonstrate the concept beautifully. Bring the nose up just a little bit. All right, so we're starting to approach 1,200 feet there. Remember, 1,200 feet was that initial drop. We're not doing the circling approach, though, so we can go all the way down to 540 here. So I'm going to go ahead and pause. Nice. So let's see how we did. So if I scroll down here, you can see here that I've got Zovox just slightly short of Zovox here. The reason I'm just slightly short of Zovox, as you probably observed during that approach there, is that our lovely 12 inches of mercury didn't work. We ended up closer to 14, which is actually a little more authentic. Usually it's almost 15 inches here, so it doesn't surprise me. But notice that we were just ever so slightly short of Zovox for the purposes of hitting the 1,200 feet. By short, by the way, not by much. If I actually zoom in a little bit, you can see that's less than a mile short, which, again, this is a non-precision approach. That's not terrible. Now, if we pop back over here and take a quick look at things, you'll notice we can chill at the 1,200 feet, or we can continue down to 580 feet until we hit our missed approach point, which is going to be 7.1 in the DME. There's our 4.0 right there. So we're not bad. So for my purposes here, I'm going to continue down all the way to the magical altitude there. I cannot get over how low you can take this plane, though. That is just absolutely terrifying. That's 580 feet. Let's keep going. All right, again, just holding everything steady according to my HSI, and come to my left just a little bit there. I haven't been looking at the GPS this entire time, by the way, if you're curious. Now, there's a really dangerous concept here. I broke a rule. Abort! And I just blew the approach. Now, did you see how I blew the approach? One of the things it had mentioned, it was at or above. So unfortunately, I crossed Zovox below. So that is a no joy there. That would have been bad. Don't do that. All right, let's go ahead and reduce our power back to 14, and we'll continue down to our minimums here. There we go. Perfect. So I'm going to continue at my 500 feet per minute. Notice, by the way, all that energy I lost during this. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to cruise all the way down to the minimums. And our goal here is going to be to try to start looking for the runway. Now, as crazy as this sounds, when you're doing these style 9 precision approaches, we're going to be interested in trying to see things for the purposes of landing on them. This is not designed to get you all the way down to the runway. It's instead designed to get you close enough to be able to make the decision if you can go down to the runway. Now, one of the things that will very much impress you here is just how stupidly low we're going to be when we hit the missed approach point. This is crazy. I love the fact I don't have to touch my control other than a little bit of pitch and a little bit of roll here. Now imagine if you got the VOR tuned in correctly. There we go. It looks pretty good. That looks pretty good right there. I like that. A little bit to the left. And we're still looking for the airport. We're about to hit minimums. Still looking for the airport. Uh-oh. We're getting very close to our missed approach point. Now remember, that missed approach point comes at that's a little over 7 nautical miles there. Looking at my DME, I'm at 6.2. Getting dangerously close to the missed point, and level us off. We can't go past that point because that would be our minimum altitude. And now we search for the runway until we hit our missed approach point. Now fortunately, there's the runway, so we can go ahead and execute ourselves a landing. So as you can see, knowing those numbers in advance of our actual engagement here made this a much simpler process. The other thing that I think is worth noting as well is just because we took the time to calculate those numbers is because we were at such a drastically different altitude when we actually executed our types of approaches here, it caused our numbers to not be as accurate. As a matter of fact, we almost had to use an extra 2 inches of mercury there for my manifold pressure just for the sake of being able to safely execute the approach. But now that I know that number, next time I execute that approach, we'll be able to do it a little bit more safely. Now, one of the fun Mooney tricks, by the way, is you go like this, you pop your speed brakes out, and what happens is the nose goes like this on you, and it just holds there. And we're going right on the white bars, right on the white bars, like a show off. A little bit of deflection there from the wind. And we're awesome. That plane does not have that much trouble when you land. All right, our next video, of course, we'll do this entire approach again, but this time we'll do it with less than ideal weather. Enjoy.